I've attended these COPs. I've monitored them. Say that Africa has never benefited of any funding. So I can say that perhaps Jean-Louis Borloo benefited more. What I can say is that the project is moving forward. The European Parliament supporting that project, and we feel that as far as that project is concerned, electrification, that is Africa, will benefit. And they said why they were giving the funding to Jean-Louis Borloo. It was because Jean-Louis Borloo had a relevant project. Perhaps if Africa had something in the negotiations, in the international negotiations, project-wise, we would have gotten something. With regards to an audit, I've already commented on that. For those of you waiting for an audit, when the audit section resumes and you get a report, you will hear details on that. But I said I'm not here to give you the results of an audit. The person that should give you a report on the audit is supposed to report to me before reporting to you. That is the administrative procedure. When a document comes out of the Bureau of PAP and is disseminated, we are questioned. So we have to monitor these documents. When a ticket is issued, because obviously I won't be able to use the ticket, I ask that the ticket be rerouted. And they tell me that to reroute the ticket, they have to go through this procedure. I could have changed the itinerary myself, but I cannot obviously change it from outside the country. And now I'm being asked to follow a procedure, even though it will mean a more expensive ticket. So some of these issues are administrative. The colleague from Sierra Leone said something. My country, Cameroon, is currently in line with all African Union legal instruments. And I personally, from the 22nd of February, if there have been any delays, I can say it's simply because of administrative procedures. If I had a copy of that letter, I would have given it to you. But the report has already been sent to the presidency, and we have been told that at the next session, the Division of Organic Affairs will send it to the President, and the Presidency will send it to the National Assembly. So I feel that by the next session, Cameroon would have concluded on that. So I cannot comment on that now. But the reality is that when I go on missions, when I go visiting people, that's the first question I ask. What is the update on the ratification? So I feel that people should follow my example. I should lead by example, and I can assure you that this will be done. We will not talk about it again. I said something earlier, which is that a lot of what is being achieved currently is achieved thanks to national parliaments. And I want us to at least thank the national parliaments because they indirectly contribute to our budget. Because if you add up everything that national parliaments do, we would have, instead of $17,000, what would it be? It would be over $40,000, because when I write to a national parliament, I say, place XY person on mission. Is the national parliament obliged to put that person on mission? No, but they do, because to progress. So they pay for the person's ticket, they pay for the person's upkeep. When we went to France, Mrs. Kenyon, you were asked who. Let me tell you how that delegation, what it was made up of. Here, the Agriculture Committee had begun negotiations on participation at COP with NEPAD. At first, NEPAD said that they would not be funding participation to COP. I had to write to national assemblies asking them to send people so that we have a team for COP. That team was drawn up in France. Everyone had their individual country at their own cost. The only thing we paid for was local transport. They paid ticket, they paid accommodation. I think Mrs. Karen has a personal problem with me, or maybe perhaps with finance. But, Madam, I can tell you, please understand that I am not an ordinary man. I do not have... Madam, you said something, and when you were speaking, I did not interrupt you. No, no.
Order.
Order, please, order.
May I address
Madam McLean, sit down and terá tempo se quiser.
Going to have sufficient time. You're going to have time to address us.
Thank you. I take exception, Mr. President, to a personal attack on me.
No.
This is a debate, and I'm allowed to express myself.
No.
Am I protected, Mr. President, to make my point of order? I think it is so unfortunate that the President is shouting at in his response. He's kind of shouting at the whole House, and then he attacks me saying that I have a personal problem with him. I am debating. And I don't think that he should get personal. In his response, he should say, Honourable Kalyan, this is the point, here is the fact. Get out of the attack on me. I think it's unfortunate.
Mr. President, go ahead.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think perhaps there was a misunderstanding. I'm not shouting. This is the way I speak. I'm used to speaking loudly. I told you where I come from, and I always feel like I don't have a mic in front of me necessarily. If you feel that I was yelling at you, I apologize. When you're asking questions, you give us your names, and I'm simply answering that question. So what is wrong with me saying you asked the question? It's not an attack. No, what did I say? I said that you said this, you said that. I do not feel that I'm responding to your question, because every time your questions tend to address issues that are not necessarily of substance. If you feel it's an attack, a personal attack, Madam, with regards to ratification, I already answered that question. In the report, we were said to have only thanked 4 countries for ratifying, but 10 countries have signed. But we're thanking countries that ratified. I don't know if that was well said. We're thanking countries that ratified, but 10 countries have signed. So there's a difference there. We said 10 countries have signed, but 4 countries have ratified. And so you have Mali, Sierra Leone, Mauritania, and then there was another country that had ratified. I said for observer missions, I said these are missions that are managed by the chairs of the various caucuses. I have never been involved in sending members out on mission. And the main which Honourable Laske raised is that on and notifying on missions. All of this comes from the African Union. Sometimes the African Union only informs us 2 days to the mission, and we have to write to the various members of parliament. And the African Union wants members of parliament to respond directly to the commission. People don't tell us that they are available, but what we will do is what you've suggested. We will do everything we need to do to get timely missions, notify you. Indeed, we did attend a very important mission, Captain, and that wasn't mentioned. We will mention it in the report. For Kenya, transparency. We're all working towards transparency. We will try as much as possible to ensure that the audit report is presented to you. With regards to media, I'd like to that indeed we have to work with media closely, because it's thanks to media that our actions are made visible. I said here that the report had somewhat of a challenge with dissemination because we didn't have an I think it was the colleague from Benin did mention that it's slow. And sometimes we don't even have a connection. Sometimes we don't have a connection. So sometimes please bear with us. Try to bear with us. We are your personnel. Because if every time a mistake, I sanction someone, that too doesn't reflect well. So that when it comes to that, though, it was the same internet connection challenges that we spoke about earlier. With regards to the Parliament of Indonesia and our visit to them, it was a prospective mission which we planned to look into areas of possible cooperation, and that was in fact what the discussions were about. In the next African Union summit, you know, when you're honest, people think that you're being critical. We were in Addis Ababa at the African Union Summit. Myself, the two vice presidents. The first vice president was supposed to meet us there, but he had some family challenges to attend to. We participated at the African Union Summit. First, we met with the ministers of foreign affairs. There are things that I, diplomatically and politically, cannot tell you. I cannot say such and such said such and such a thing. And my fourth vice president at one point almost shed tears when she listened to what people had to say about PAP. It was so emotional. So understand at some point that some countries, members of this parliament, are not being honest with us. They even ask other countries not to ratify. I can tell you, she was here. Nobody told me. She was there. It's not like I heard. So, you know, like we said earlier, let's focus on the substance, and the superficial will follow. Of course, if we focus on the substance, we should move forward. So the audit report will be presented, and I continue to say here that if I received something unduly, I can say that I was not aware. Every time I make within my entitlements and I'm told there's no funding for it, I accept and I sit back. I apologize if I said anything hurtful. It's the truth. In my opinion, it had to be said. Sometimes we have to be honest. Some people want to move towards improvement. Some people want to move back. We're all working towards achieving the same. I apologize if I left out a few questions. I believe that I have answered all. Honorable Malakto. He knows what he's talking about. We cannot say that our executives necessarily want to give us more powers. There's a level of resistance, and it is indeed that resistance that our colleague from Algeria mentioned, because if you talk about this at Ministry of Foreign Affairs, obviously, they'd be forced to work on it, but then it's not left to them alone. So I encourage you to continue to lobby. And we will continue to work with the World Food Programme. I'm very happy and available to work with everybody. Traore asked about the NGO from Mexico. What's the update on the Mexico mission? The same forum opens in Cape Town tomorrow, but we plan to work with that NGO on capacity building. They work on governance in Africa. I believe that everyone commended us and said they were available to work with us. We, on the other hand, do not refuse. We are happy to work with you. We count on your collaboration. With regards to health insurance, a quick comment on the health insurance issue. I got here on the 24th, and I wanted to run a test. I wasn't feeling very well. I went to the hospital we are assigned to, and I found that with Discovery, you don't need any form of you don't need any form of collateral, but with the other insurance companies, you do. So I asked why that is the case, and they said it's because some of us are not residents here, so we have to always leave something. So I said I would get back to you on that and find out what can be done about that, Mr. Chairman. That's what I have to say about that for now. For now, I thank you, colleagues, for your attention.
His Excellency, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, dear colleagues of the Bureau, dear members of this Assembly, I think that having received all the answers which arose from our debate and seeing that all the issues have been answered, I think that we can proceed to the next phase of our agenda, which is to present the report to you for your approval. Who proposes, who moves for the approval? Who's going to move for the adoption of this report? May I conclude that silence signifies consent to the approval of the report? Do we agree with the report which has been presented, and do we approve same? May we say that expressly and tacitly through your clapping and other forms, I can only conclude that this Assembly says yes, that this activity report was presented and has been approved. I would also like to thank all of you for your enthusiastic collaboration. We decided that we are going to only give 3 minutes for each person, and only 2 cases went beyond that maximum period. So I really thank you from the bottom of the
Chers collègues,
Eu gostaria de vos agradecer pela vossa atenção.
To Mr. Clark, sir, can you please move us on to the next item on the agenda?
Thank you, Excellency. Good afternoon to all. The next item we have is the presentation and debate on human rights with particular focus on the rights of women. And the presenter is Her Excellency Honorable Mama Fatima Singate.
A resolve to uphold and promote human rights. This same resolve is seen in Article 30 of the African Charter, which provides for the establishment of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, charged with the responsibility of promoting and protecting human and people's rights on our beloved continent. Furthermore, the Second Ordinary Assembly of African Union Heads of States and Government adopted in 2003 the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa. This historical protocol laid down a proper framework for the advancement of women's rights in Africa.